Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum students. This is Maria Farooq here, your biology teacher. Today we are going to start with unit number 3, that is biodiversity. So students, today we are going to study the overview of the term biodiversity. What is biodiversity? What are the threats to biodiversity? What are the causes of extinction of biodiversity? What are the factors affecting biodiversity? How we should conserve biodiversity? And this lecture is the introduction of these kind of terms to get you a better understanding of the unit. Okay. So biodiversity means bio means life, whereas diversity means variety. For an example, a population of human beings having different types of individuals. Someone is tall, someone is short, someone is green eyes individuals, some is black, some has brown eyes, some have curly hair, some have silky shiny hair, some are fat, some are smart, some are with black skin, some are whiteys, and etc. So there's a variety of individuals in a human population. This is known as biodiversity. Variety in the species of any organism. For example, if we take oranges, there's a variety of oranges today we see. There's Musammi, there is Kinnu, there is Malta. So this is a variety in the oranges. This is what we call biodiversity. Sometimes we get sick of seeing the same thing again and again. If I want to have a fruit and I'm eating apple every day, I may get sick of eating apple every day. So I require a change in the diet. I want to change the fruit. I may desire for a lychee. I may desire for a guava. So the biodiversity is a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Biodiversity is the diversity of living creatures in terms of fruits, in terms of insects. There's a diversity of insects which we can see. There's a diversity of four-legged animals. There's a diversity of crawlers. There is a diversity of fruits. There's a diversity of nuts. There's a diversity of vegetables. There's a diversity of flesh, meat, chicken, beef, fish, etc. So we are blessed with the factor of diversity, and that is why we should maintain this diversity and work in saving this biodiversity. The trees, the variety of shrubs, the cones, the heavy canopy trees in our environment all beautify our environment. So moving on, biodiversity and biological diversity are one and the same thing. That may include the variety of microorganisms as well living on earth, plants, animals, microorganisms, etc. So extinction, there are some species which are getting extinct day by day. That is a loss to our biodiversity. There are two terms. One is endangered, the other one is extinct. Endangered means those organisms which are under the danger of getting extinct but are not extinct. For an example, panda is under the danger of getting extinct but still there. Blind Indus dolphins are under the danger of getting extinct but are still there in a smaller amount. But extinction basically means those species which are vanished from the face of the earth. For an example, dinosaurs. For an example, dragons, dinosaurs having wings in the earlier historical eras. So those species have gone extinct. The species are specific organisms which have distinct kind of characteristics of size, shape, habitat, its behavior, and its uh, kind that remains constant throughout the year. So it is a species of monkey, a species of mango, special category of an individual is known as its species. An ecosystem has community of living organisms that interact with the biotic and abiotic factors of the environment that create an ecosystem. So energy is flowing in this ecosystem in a balanced way, and these organisms are linked together through different nutrient cycles: hydrogen cycle, oxygen cycle, nitrogen cycle, carbon cycle, etc. A population is a group of living organisms that can interbreed and produce fertile offsprings in an area, and these populations are found in a community, whereas a community is a group of two or more populations. For example, a jungle is a community, and in a jungle you may find ants, you may find ferns, fungi, tigers, snakes, etc. So all these organisms in a community living together, creating a food web and food web, and moving and surviving. So this is a example of a community. Limiting factors. So limiting factors are those factors that affect the size, that limit the size of a population of that community. So the increasing the size of population and maintaining a balance in an ecosystem, those are created, or this balance is created by certain limiting factors. For example, the availability of food for certain organisms, the availability of water, the living conditions, the temperature limits, the nutrients, soil nutrients available for the growth of that organism or what. So these are certain limiting factors that limit the growth and the proper breeding of population in a community. Carrying capacity. Every environment has a specific carrying capacity. So the maximum population that an environment can support is known as carrying capacity. If a population size rises above that specific carrying capacity, then that cannot meet the population's needs, and the population may not grow properly. It will be overpopulated and eventually die off due to the limiting factors. Now, certain threats to biodiversity. When we narrow down a geographical area, when the population size of any species is reduced, when the breeding rate of any individual organism reduces, or any kind of natural disaster arises like volcanoes, hurricanes, tornadoes, etc., earthquakes, these are all threats to biodiversity. Natural threats. What are man made threats? Anthropogenic means man made. When we modify a habitat, we develop societies, we kill certain organisms. overexploitation of selected species, the overhunting of ducks, overhunting of, hunting of parrots, the excessive use of certain species like fish, overhunting of fish, the introduction of external species in our environment that may be the limiting factors for or threats to our biodiversity. The pollution factors affect the biodiversity, the global warming, the warming up of our air or the environment, our agricultural practices, our hunting of deers and rabbits and etc. may cause the decrease in the biodiversity. So what are the causes of species extinction? How species can get extinct? When we trade our animals for profit, for example fish, we trade our fish for profit purposes, tomatoes for profit and etc. This is a reason of extinction. Hunting and trapping of certain organisms, or harvesting of a crop, destroying the habitat of certain organisms, creating excessive amount of pollution are the causes of extinction, of dying out of a specific species from the face of the earth. So these factors are the reason. So what should we do? We should preserve this biodiversity. It is of great importance and is a blessing. So we should conserve this. How can we conserve it? Biodiversity inventories. We should, inventories means a complete list. So we should develop a complete list related to our activities, and before conducting or taking a step in and disturbing the biodiversity of living organisms, we should develop a list in which we have to write the positive effects and the negative effects. If we change the biodiversity or change the criteria or change the feeding habit of an individual or organism, and if it has positive effect, we should continue doing it. If we have negative effect, then we should not conduct that activity. So we should develop proper inventories before performing an activity. Conserving biodiversity in protected habitats. So we should develop protected habitats. For example, in situ conservation. In situ means we should develop some wildlife parks, zoos, or we should develop biological gardens, plant botanical gardens, animal gardens, where we should protect our national species. And ex situ means we should develop a gene bank, a gene pool. We should develop and take samples and save the genes and the DNA and the seeds of certain species in a proper bank, in a proper storage house that should be located away from the main city, and at a government scale, in order to protect that species so that it cannot go extinct. So the seed bank, gene bank, pollen bank, DNA bank are in the ex situ conservation categories. On the bottom here you can see a gene bank where the seeds, pollens, DNA, genes are secured in a proper way, in a properly designed lab by the government on a larger scale in laboratories or so. And here is the zoo, a national park, in situ protection or a wildlife area where we can save a national park where we can save and conserve these species. So in C2 is we can develop some grooves, some lakes, reserve biosphere. We should leave some forest area where natural biodiversity of living things can exist. We should protect the terrestrial land, marine, water area where naturally the organisms can live, survive, and interbreed, and develop national wildlife parks. Whereas in XC2, we should prepare a specific home for our gardens for some plants. We should develop a seed bank where we should store all the seeds of different varieties of plants available in our national habitat. We should save their genes, we should save their DNAs, and develop botanical and zoological and aqua gardens up to that level in an isolated area from the main city. I hope you understood the concept of biodiversity, the threats to it, how what are the limiting factors to it, how can we conserve and protect it. So I will continue this unit in my second lecture as well. So stay connected. Thank you, class.